Hey guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. We are here with a sneaky bonus episode thing where we're here to talk about the last challenge that we hadn't filmed a video for in 2025. That was part of our 2025 Buddy Reading Challenge. That was the bonus challenge, which was to read a book recommended by a favorite author. The idea around this that was that we would each find a book that was either like blurbed, reviewed somewhere, like on Goodreads. Maybe they talked about it somewhere in an interview. Maybe they, I don't know, tweeted about it, whatever it is. Somewhere where one of our favorite authors was like, hey, I really loved this book. And then we would pick up that book and hopefully find either a new author or another book that we would really love because this person whose writing and work we really loved is also recommending something. It must be a match made in heaven. That was the experiment. We're here to tell you whether or not that actually succeeded. So please enjoy. Gretchen's spoiling the whole thing. But if you would like to hear us talk about some books that our favorite authors really loved, continue watching the video because I think it was an interesting challenge, and
It was,
I think
yeah.
we'll have a good discussion about it.
So the first thing we're going to do is tell you about these authors and that we love that we wanted to get a recommendation from. So this is a little bit of a deep cut for people because this unfortunately is a very long time ago now. But I originally got into reading romance by reading historical romance. This happened for me during the pandemic. I went on a total binge. And so actually one of the only videos I think that I really posted that year was this like tier ranking video of these historical romances. And I very quickly found that I needed to move on from that genre pretty quickly. I just found there to be a lot of sameness. And I don't mean that to like, if you love it, I love that for you. It just stopped working for me outside of a few authors. And in fact, at this point, there is one author who consistently mostly publishes historical romance, and I will read everything that she ever writes. And if it's the back of a cereal box, I will be there. Um, and that is Sara Maclean. I have reviewed arcs of some of her latest books, including the Hell's Bells series, which has been amazing so far. And for me, the reason that she is a standout in a genre that kind of got pretty meh to me um, is that she always writes these really incredible characters. She has a real attunement to like the ideas of like female characters in the time and pushing those boundaries and like having male characters who can be vulnerable but also are really funny. Her banter is great, and she just really always comes up with these very unique plots, even though, you know, a lot of historical romance is again kind of like a little bit of the same to me. Although Michaela and I did read a wonderful trans historical romance last year as well, but again we were trying to like push on the boundaries of the common tropes. Um and one of her big things is that she really loves it when the man falls so hard he like disintegrates into a pile of goo for her. And that's like one of her big things. So she always has like these like, you know, if it's the rake, the big strong man, like whatever it is, the police officer, the who's just like, for you I am cinnamon bun. And then it's like the strong woman who is just like not, you know, made to simper and be like, I can't wait to be your housewife, or your lady or whatever. And she's like, by the way, like I'm still gonna kick ass and take names. And he's like, yes girl, go. So anyway, I highly recommend her books. You can go check out some of my reviews, but Sara also is just like really invested in the genre of romance. She has a podcast called Fated Mates where she interviews people and talks about romance's genre. And so like she's just really into romance as like a cultural object as well. And I am in awe of her. I love her. She's great.
On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, as we're wont to do here, I picked Joe Hill, who is a favorite horror author. Joe Hill, if you didn't know, is Stephen King's son, and very much like Stephen King, his books tend to cross genres a little bit. They're always usually speculative, and they usually have some sort of horror element to them. Some of them are very traditionally horror, some of them are more like sci-fi speculative type stuff, and he just put out one that's like dark academia stuff that I haven't read yet. That's on my TBR. But Joe Hill is one of my favorite horror authors because for me, all of his books focus much more on the human element, no matter what the sci-fi, speculative, whatever is going on in those books. The biggest monsters are almost always something that at their core is very human. He likes to focus a lot on like gray morality. So even his villains, quite often he is able to humanize them and get you to empathize with them by the end of the book, or at the very least sort of see their point of view. And his heroes are very rarely like 100% good. Usually they have very negative traits that will affect the story, which is something that I think a lot of people are sort of afraid to do, is to make your heroes have these negative traits. They aren't always 100% redeemed. I've done reviews of his books where I'm like, I don't think he was 100% successful in getting you to like still root for this character with the negative traits that they had. But as he's grown as an author, I have loved every single book of his that I have read, and I think I've read all but the most recent, newest one that just came out this fall. So it was his eye for character building that I was hoping was going to show up in this recommendation. And yeah, I can talk about which books we picked and what they were about next.
So, one of the things that you may be wondering is how did we pick these books? How did we find these books? How did we know that these were recommended by these authors? For me, I went to Sarah's website, and Sarah has a page called Recommended Reads. So, I took a very easy route to this, and there are a number of books on this page that I had not read before. But if you also know any much about me and sports, I am a huge baseball fan. And so I didn't have to look far when I just looked this up again on my phone. It was the second book down. There was this book by Kat Gerardo called Wild Pitch. And I just remember looking at this and going, no, but yes, tell me more. But oh boy. Because I have a weird relationship with sports romances when I like the sport, because I'm just like, a little bit more research would have been great. Which by the way was an issue I had with this, but we'll talk about that later. Um, so on her website, Sarah has like a couple of lines about why she's recommending it, what the book's about. And so Sarah wrote on her website, wildly sexy baseball romance that matches an aging alpha submissive catcher with the first woman pitcher in the major leagues. These two need each other on and off the field, and it's a freaking delight. Excellent buy rep. Um, and it is also a diverse romance as well. And so I was like, okay, it's diverse, it's queer, it's a baseball romance. I have no idea what it means to be an alpha submissive. um, so I was like, you know what? I'll go off the deep end on this. So while Sarah's description gives you a little bit of an idea, I'm gonna do my own. So our main female main character is Sierra. She is a bi Latino woman, and she is the first woman pitcher in the major leagues. And the story opens at the All Star game of her rookie year. And so, for those who don't know, the All Star game is kind of like in the middle of the season. So she's been having this season where her current team is treating her really poorly. And she's been having a terrible, terrible time. She's not performing at all. And so there's a lot of people snickering behind her back that she's only at this All Star game because she's like a publicity stunt and not because she has any real talent. And one of the other people at the All Star game is Mateo Reyes. Mateo is about 10 years older than her or more. I can't quite remember. He's been in the big leagues for a while. He is an aging veteran, but he is her idol. He is also Latino. He is out as a bi man. And she does the rookie thing where she's like, "Hi, and he's like, "Oh, for the love of God." Um, but he does end up standing up for her when some of the other men in the locker room are doing their locker room talk thing. Um, and right after that game, she ends up being traded to his team. So they're teammates who also really, really want to sleep with each other. And there's the age gap thing, which I'm not always a huge fan of. Um, but also, Ken Gerardo did not do. Listen, a pitcher in the major leagues, I just have to tell you this. You are either a starter or you are a reliever. Starters will sometimes be used in the relief position in the playoffs if necessary. And they have her both starting and relieving, and I was in pain. It doesn't work like that. Oh, man. But anyway, guys, me and sport romances have a complicated history. Um, we're gonna go a little bit more into what we thought about it, but I will just say as a teaser, outside of that, which I'm not actually like putting into my rating because that's just me being crotchety, I didn't love it. And yeah, I could see why Sarah recommended it, but I didn't love it.
In my case, Joe Hill, despite his dad being on every single book ever, like I feel like you can't spit in a bookstore without some book being blurbed by Stephen King. Even outside of the horror section, that man is everywhere. Um, I don't feel like I see him blurbing a lot of books, but he is very active on Twitter, or was. I don't know if he's moved over to Blue Sky or something else at this point, but he quite often recommends stuff there. So that was where I went when I went to find a book that he recommended. And I just sort of scrolled until I found one that said, this is the best book that I've read this year, or one of the best books I read this year. And I picked that one sight unseen. I didn't like go through a bunch of them. I was just like, sure, whatever that is, I'll read it. I landed on The Night Always Comes by Willie Vlotten, which at this point is also now like a Netflix miniseries movie thing. So if you don't want to read the book because it was a time, you can maybe watch the story that way if you prefer. It is technically a thriller. It wasn't fully a horror. It's like a literary fiction thriller that is focusing on a girl named Lynette, who is like barely 30, just turned 30, about our age. She's struggling with bad credit. She's working multiple jobs because she is trying desperately to buy the house that she, her mother, and her disabled brother rent from the landlord. It is not a good quality house. It is falling apart. But at this point, she doesn't have enough credit or good enough credit to get an actual house. And the housing prices in Portland, where this is set, have like quadrupled in the last 5 years. Something that makes a whole lot of sense as a person who is in the process of buying a house right now. Just the housing market is ridiculous, and you pretty much get what you get. So the landlord was willing to cut them a deal and give them less money for the house than he could get putting it on the market, but she would need her mother to co-sign with her because her credit is not good enough to get a good loan, and she's been working her ass off to get a down payment for said house. The events of the book are how that spirals out of control and doesn't end up happening. And it is very much focused on themes of poverty, gentrification, the things that people will do to get ahead in a world where there is so much just stratification in the economic tiers in an area. How you can go from one block that is the richest rich people that you've ever met to another block with people who can't really even afford to eat, and all of the things in between. So yeah, that was where I was. And again, I totally understand why Joe Hill likes it. There is a lot of like gray morality, ambiguity, and a lot of focuses on the ways that people harm each other, both intentionally and unintentionally, involved in there. So I totally see where that was coming from. And just like Gretchen, we'll get more into what we thought about it. But I also not a huge fan of this one personally, but we'll get to see why that is in a second.
Okay, so first off, why we both had clear connections to the author doing the recommending. So we're going to talk about that first before we get into the
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
so to be very clear, like I said in the beginning, Sarah really likes men who turn into a puddle of goo for their ladies. And I use that kind of intentionally, Sarah on her part has only ever written straight romances. Um, and obviously this one was queer, but happened to have that type of a dynamic in it. And I think a lot of that does come from the idea of like the alpha submissive thing, where he's like super alpha and like domineering with her, in the sense that she is very nervous. She's new to the league, and he really is like supporting her and like bucking her up, and just like when she's like, I don't know if I can do this, he's like, you can do this. And like, you have to trust in yourself. And like, he is defending her against some people who are pretty terrible. Um, and like I said, you find out that, one of the reasons that she's been kind of struggling, when she has the talent to be there, right? I mean, if you anyone in a minority group of any kind who breaks into like those like all male, like all whatever, say like they're not can't just be as good, they have to be doubly better. And she has that type of stuff. But she was really really kind of torn apart by her previous team, who just none of whom wanted to see a girl in the league. And so like he is kind of taking that side of the alpha, like, I'm gonna make sure you eat, like you're gonna practice, like you're blah blah. But one of the things that you learn in the bedroom is that Sierra is a dom. And that's actually been a problem in a lot of her relationships, because that's not a dynamic that she's found to be very comfortable for the other partners that she's dated, who don't really like it when she takes control in the bedroom. And then to find out that Mateo, who is like, oh wait, he's always in charge on the field, and so when he is in the bedroom, he's like, I would love it if you take control. The sex scenes are extremely explicit, BDSM style, which was also very different. Obviously, I've read that in other places, but because Sarah's usually writing like these like sweet historical romances, that I was like very, very different, like in an explicit. But I just really saw that in their dynamic of like, he is this like really strong gruff, it's very grumpy sunshine in that sense, but he's just like, the second he like basically sees her, he is has the hots for her, and just falls in love with her and her talent, and super believes in her and wants her to succeed. And even at one point says to her, like, because she does better when he's her catcher, and he's like, listen, you can't depend on me like that. Like, you have the stuff to do to be great no matter who's, catching. And so like, and she apparently can also hit, which is not typical for pitchers. And he like convinces her to like, and they both have really adorable families. So yeah, I really saw all that. I really liked I liked most of those bits. Um, the the sex scenes were a little bit much for me. Um, just in terms of like, not necessarily what they were, but just it was like, and this is this toy, and this is how you use it, and this is how, and I was like, why is this sex scene going on for like 20 pages? Like, it was just like very, very like detailed, and um just kind of like overwritten. Um, so yeah, but anyway, I just saw the dynamic for sure. I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly the unique story, the dynamic. This is exactly what Sarah goes for sure.
On my side, what was interesting was that this one was not speculative at all. There was like, it was all very set in reality, which is very different from Joe Hill, but it does have that gray morality thing. Both our heroine, Lynette, has done some really awful stuff in her past, which you get to find out through the course of the book, and is also actively doing some pretty horrible stuff to the people that she knows. She is burning so many bridges over the course of this book, which literally takes place, I want to say, in 24 hours. Like, I don't think this book is more than a day max of time frame that we are spending with these characters. It has a very wide cast of characters that you are meeting in different chunks and groups. Each of them also has a very like weird gray background or current lifestyle that they're living, from drug dealing to prostitution to any sort of thing that people will do that is technically illegal or even maybe legal, to try and get ahead in life. Some of them are successful in that there is like a prostitute who basically gets her lavish lifestyle funded by the men that she like escorts with, or not. We see people who have been drug dealing their whole life, who are living in squalor, who have a pregnant 17-year-old that they have living with them now that they need to figure out what to do with, so on and so forth. So all of these characters are showing a very wide spectrum of both success and failure at trying to just live a normal life in a world where success isn't really guaranteed. It also has a character who is mentally disabled in there that was treated very realistically in some ways, as well as the relationships that the people who are meant to be caring for him have very conflicted feelings and have both spent their whole life trying to make sure that that person is supported, both in Lynette's mother and Lynette. That is something that both of them have had to focus their entire lives around, because they can't just abandon someone who is not able to support themselves. But also, they both feel very trapped by this circumstance, which makes sense. They can't just go do what they want to do with their lives because of that. And sometimes they will make selfish decisions, like sticking him with an iPad in a corner of a room to work so that they can work, and they feel guilty about not taking care of him in a better way. Or when they do finally choose to do something just for themselves, they feel like they should have spent that money or done something else in that case. So again, Joe Hill very much focuses on the like human character and the ways that people harm each other. That's all showcased here in this book. I totally see like why he in particular would have been like, this is a really great character study. Yeah. My issues started to come in with the writing of it, but I'll get into more on that in a second.
So we've already discussed my thing with the baseball. And again, I just please, please don't do this in your sports romance. Anyway, we're just gonna move past that. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I think one of the functions of like, because again, there's a clear difference here between historical and contemporary romance, right? And I don't want to say that we're like comparing them apples to apples, because these are different genres with different like tropes and things that like you have to hit. But I think one of the functions of historical romance, just based on the gender roles and the sex roles at that time, is that usually like the very explicit sex scenes often get pushed, because they're so often, and this is one of the reasons I stopped reading it, like, you know, the virgin and the like, so they have to kind of like get married or it's not proper. And I mean, like, that's a little tired to me. So I do enjoy, I've read some good ones where, you know, she's been married before and therefore it's not an issue. But one of the things that that does allow is that it means that any type of slow burn, there has to be some sort of relationship developing. And Michaela and I have discussed at length how neither of us are into the lust at first sight thing. And that's very much what this book is. And they are having like explicit sex scenes quite early. And for me, it was very frustrating how late in the book they kind of started thinking about the fact that if this gets out, it's going to affect her differently than it's going to affect him. And to the point where like there's one she has like a separate locker room. And they're like in there after a game doing some stuff. And I was just like, are we not going to have this discussion at all? Like, there's a discussion about the age gap that's just like never had. There's a discussion about how, like, you know, she is finally starting to get like a foothold in the league where people are seeing her. And of course, people are already saying that she's only good when he catches her. And of course, like, I mean, insert ball joke. He like, so it does end up being a thing later, but it they kind of act like it's like this sudden realization when you would have thought that this was like a gender like dynamic that you would have thought would have been more present earlier, considering, you know. So I did find that really frustrating. And then, like I said, their relationship kind of starts as a lust at first sight thing, and that for me is always really hard to kind of start to roll with. And I did kind of feel like she had some hero worship for him as well. So like, that was a little weird. And I just the progression of their relationship, yes, he absolutely does fall potentially also first and harder. um and I do really think that he cares about her, but it just I don't know, it just never really fully clicked for me. And I just didn't find the character writing up to par for me generally, um, in terms of what I look for in a fully fleshed out 3D romance novel. And so yeah, it's definitely not a bad book at all. But I think I ended up around like 3.5 stars, which I don't think is a rating I've certainly never given one of Sarah's books. So yeah, it was one of those things where all of the elements were there. The gender role, like complicating, like, interesting storyline. He falls both first and harder into a pile of goo for her. And she's like a strong, capable woman who don't need no man, but she'll like let him hang out if he wants to. Um, but yeah, it was just, I don't know, it definitely didn't, as a whole thing, didn't click for me. There is a second book in this series. The series is called Dominating the Diamond. And that one is, I believe, a relationship between three people, based on the cover and the description that I read. But this is one of those books where I'm not super motivated to continue reading the series based on the writing, just generally.
Same sort of thing where the writing on this one was not up to par for what I would expect of something from Joe Hill. I talked with Gretchen while I was reading this that my biggest complaint was that every single character in this book monologues about their entire life the whole way through. And if it was just one character doing this, I could maybe look past it. Some people do just overshare, but when every single character that Lynette interacts with needs you to know why they were in financial struggles and what horrible things they used to do 10 years ago, and how that affected them now and why they're doing the thing they're doing right now, over and over and over again in a book that is only a little bit over 200 pages, it was exhausting to read, and it didn't feel like natural dialogue. Like, these characters, nobody talks like this. There's one character that Lynette goes to who works at one of the jobs that she works at, and she's like, "Hey, you went to prison, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, so my ex and I were gonna rob this old folks home that she worked at, and we were gonna just take the medication, but then she brought in this other guy that she knew, and they started robbing all like the TVs and the watches and stuff the old people had, and then they both threw me under the bus." And I'm like, this is a person you haven't talked to before. Why are they telling you the whole story about how they went to prison and what happened? And I know that it is related because she's asking him to help her steal something, but nobody does that. Like, you don't just walk up and start telling some random stranger about your ex that you hate because they got you thrown in jail. So think of that, but like every single character 20 times over, the same thing is happening over and over again. And while it does come into play with the themes of the book, and that it is showing all of the different ways that people can be horrible to each other and take advantage of systems, or whatever is going on, I do feel like it wasn't done in a way that was to the same writing standard that I would expect of something like. So the writing bothered me. It was like a slog to get through, even though it was only 200 pages for me. It was not my favorite thing, and it was ultimately like super depressing. If you are someone who needs triggers, please look into the triggers before you go to grab this book, if it does sound good for you, because I know that like some people like that sort of like trauma porn, like what's the next horrible thing that's about to be exposed sort of thing. Like, this definitely popular book, and I know that some people would really like it, and may not feel as put off by that writing style like I was, but definitely at least take an eye on that, because just about every horrible thing that you can think of that a human can do is going to show up in here, from abortion all the way through attempted murder slash actual murder going on. So that's in there, that's in the book. it just wasn't for me. I think I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't like bad. But it didn't have the writing standard that I wanted. And while it did have some of the things that I really love about Joe Hill's writing, it was lacking in the adventure and the curiosity for me. It just felt like, let's talk about all the bad things that can happen instead of saying, here's somebody trying to get through life and some bad things that can happen, and how they overcome them. This was more so just, yeah, everything's awful and the world sucks and there's no money and this is where we're living now, which just isn't what I wanted to be reading or thinking about.
I read literature to escape,
Yeah.
not to end up in the same place.
Yeah, exactly. Here's more of everything horrible in the world. No, yeah. Not for me, unfortunately. And maybe if I was a little bit more picky about which book I picked up from Joe Hill's recommendations, I might have found something I enjoyed more. But for the challenge itself, which was just to say this is my favorite author and I'll hopefully like a thing that they liked, I was okay with just blindly going into a book. And maybe there's something else out there that he's loved that I would also love, but this one definitely was not it. It was not the one for me. So yeah, not my favorite one, and an interesting challenge that we both read books that had things that we've liked previously, but didn't like this particular, which is kind of funny. I part of me wishes one of us loved it and one of us hated it, because then we could like say at least, it's out there and it could happen, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. And I think that's true of all blurbs too. Is that even though an author you really love might blurb a book, you sometimes will read those blurbs and go, "Really? Is this just PR?"
Well, and of course, we love that author for who they are.
Yeah.
And I just want to say explicitly, like, we did not expect these books to be carbon copies, right?
Yes.
Because we know that this author is not like, we know that they're
Yes.
different people. But it is hard when, you love that author so much and you just kind of like are expecting a certain standard when these are some of our favorite authors, because as I mentioned about Sarah, for me she excels like all of these standards. So maybe that's also not fair either. Maybe we should have picked a book recommended by a middling author that we kind of like.
Maybe.
Because of course we read these books in the context in which we read them, right? Like there's
Yes.
no separating that. And I obviously we're not judging these authors' tastes either, because we can obviously see the things that people may like about them. They just were not for us. And this is why, everybody's tastes are different. And two people who Michaela and I have loved some of the same books, and then we have each loved books that the other person would hate, right? There's
Yeah.
just like that weird overlap slash Venn diagram of all of us as different readers. And it definitely, I mean, I definitely love this as an experiment to see how our Venn diagrams overlap with these authors, and then to see us both like it's not 100%, right? So it was definitely really, really interesting. And even though this video is coming out a little bit later, because this is my fault, I finished my book like literally at the last possible second, and then we just had so many videos to get out in January, beginning of January, with our wrap up and our new prompts and the reading roundtable. So like, this just took a hot minute, but it was definitely an interesting bonus challenge to finally finish, and be able to be like, it's so weird how we had the same experience.
Yeah.
So that is the official wrap on our 2025 Buddy Reading Challenge. Hopefully you've maybe already seen that wrap up, but of course we will link that, because again, even though we're posting this a little while into 2026, this was related. For the rest of this month, you will see us with an unthemed reading roundtable where we already have a couple of great guests coming in to just bring whatever they're reading and tell us about it. And of course, don't forget that at our reading roundtables this year, we will be having participants vote in our reading bracket, which is part part of the 2026 buddy reading challenges. And so go check out any of those videos if you missed them. But this was our bonus challenge for 2025 and our bonus challenge for 2026. I think we've outdone ourselves. And Michaela, certainly by making all of our amazing graphics so that you can see what's happening and follow along. So we will see you for all of that. And then, whatever else happens, because, we plan like we don't plan all the time. So, who knows? Maybe there'll be something else, but definitely that and all of our other individual videos. So yeah, we did it. We 100%ed, 110%ed, however you want to do it, our 2025 buddy reading challenges for the first time ever in the history of the channel. We proud. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.